Well, several years ago, we had an opportunity to build a new generation of center. And we'd had some experience with hiring people with disabilities here and there. But this gave us an opportunity to really step back and think that we could probably tweak it just a little bit, the design. We were going to design a whole new building, to tweak it to enable a large number of people with disabilities to be just as effective as anybody in the world. And so we wanted to aim high. So we set a goal of 1 out of 3 new hires would be a person with a disability. Something that there weren't any examples around the world, but we wanted to aim high to see how high it could be. And I think that inspired people. Well, that building worked out to be 40% people with disabilities, over 250, and it's the most efficient distribution center we have in the chain. And everybody does the same jobs, earns the same pay, held to the same standards, and all kinds of disabilities. You go in there and you can't tell, actually you can't tell people with disabilities because you see people working. And that surprises a lot of people. But they do the same jobs. And then we spread it across the next center 2 years later, and now we spread it across all 20 centers in the United States. Over 10% of our workforce is now people with disabilities. Now, and you asked me what did people think about it as we went along. I think deep down, everybody wanted this to succeed. Now the question is, who's going to make it succeed? That becomes the issue. And even the board, when we told them we wanted to do this, they only had one question. What if it doesn't work? And what we said was, we're going to do this like any other initiative. We're going to give it our best. We think it's going to work. We've done these things before. As far as hiring people with disabilities, we've certainly built new buildings. We're going to give it our best, and if it doesn't work, we're going to adjust. We're not going to give up on any of our business objectives. We think we can help the common good and help the bottom line at the same time. But we know what our mission is. And then from then on, I got more letters from across the country of people wanting to help. When businesses look at hiring people with disabilities, I think their first thing out of the gate, they want to say, well, we're open to everybody, we just need more qualified candidates. Now what that really means is if people with disabilities can get through the current processes we have in place for hiring and training and managing, it's fine. But because those processes have inadvertently, what we found, they have inadvertently excluded a large number of people who can do the work and who can do the work as well or better, who work safer, who have better retention, who have a huge impact on culture. They can't get through those processes as is. For instance, they may have gaps in their employment. They may not be able to interview in our traditional way. They may not get through the application process. There are some things in our applications that are really not required for the job but exclude a large number of people. That was the first thing one of the things we had to do is be willing to open that door wider. Instead of saying, we look for qualified candidates, why don't we say, we want a cost-effective and efficient and a safe workforce that's inclusive. Because once you take that mindset, then all these other processes become secondary. And that's how we got through it. What are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve an effective workforce. If we have a rule that gets in the way of that, then we probably ought to change the rule rather than exclude the person. No greatness without goodness. I saw it the first time in The Life of Pi. And the main character there goes to the Pondicherry School, Petit Seminaire School in Pondicherry, India, and it's nil magnum nisi bonum. No greatness without goodness. And I think it sums up the reality of a whole career. When you come out in your career, nobody looks back and says, boy, we made a lot of money. It's always about the people that they helped or helped them along the way. And to be a reminder to us as leaders and the huge responsibility we have as leaders we impact the world around us. We can't live over here in just this world and say, okay, I'm only going to worry about the limits of the law. I'm going to do within the limits of the law to make the most money I can. That they can use that power at the same time, not give up on any of those kind of things, but still have a huge impact on the world around us. And oh, by the way, the rewards of that career are over here, not necessarily over there. No greatness without goodness. I remember it every day. So what can we do where I am to make a difference for both sides? Common good, bottom line. Well, throughout this process, there have been so many special people in such a different way. One of our earlier employees had Downs, and she was always our emissary. She would light up the place. We had Angie, who came out of Clemson, all A's, master's degree, but had cerebral palsy and couldn't get a job. And we wouldn't have hired her under typical circumstances because she didn't have the correct experience, or we would have been afraid that other people may not be comfortable around her. I mean, we would have missed out on her had we not been looking. And she is probably one of the best HR people we have in the company. And we're a company of 240,000 people. We were lucky to find Angie. There's another young man in our Connecticut Center. His name is Chris. Now, if you met him, you probably couldn't tell he has a disability. He's charming. He's always on. He does a great job. Matter of fact, in his work area, he calls himself the mayor. And he's about his young 20s. And every time I go there, I get to talk to Chris because I want to talk, because he makes my day. He's always enthusiastic. He's always up. And I found out that he spent his whole high school career, whole school career in special ed. And he wanted me to call his mom for some reason. I said, okay, I'll call his mom. So I called his mom up, and she was very gracious. But she said, you know, Chris loves this job. And he gets to work an hour and a half early every day so he can be in the cafeteria and meet up with his friends and talk. Because every day in his high school cafeteria, he sat alone. And I remember that story, and all you have to do is look at it. That's why we did this. This was the right thing to do. We're lucky to have people like Chris. When we opened up our first site, one of our first employees was a gentleman named Daryl. Daryl's about 50 when he came to work for us. I remember him walking through the center with his mom because we invited everybody in to see the work so the families could see where their child's going to work, because that's a big concern. Are they going to be protected or whatever? And I met her, and Daryl would not look you in the eye. He would keep his head down and kind of mumble. Well, Daryl came to work, and he did a fantastic job. And he took his first paycheck. He had never earned more than 6 or 7 cents an hour. He's 50 years old. And here he's taking this check, full-time work, living wage, and he takes it home. And he takes his parents out to, I think, Red Lobster for their birthday. It's the first time he'd ever paid for dinner. But anyway, he comes back to work the next day, and his boss asked him, how'd it go? He said, well, I took my paycheck home. And my mom looked at it, and she cried. Why did she cry? And Daryl's boss, Rico Robinson, a great guy, he just looked at Daryl and says, I don't know, Daryl. I don't know. But he did know, and we do know. My advice to young people with autism coming out of giant steps as they move forward is to set the expectations around work, to expect that there will be opportunities, and start demanding and working those. How do we fit in? How do we be part of this? And that includes educators, parents, to set that expectation and start working with local partnerships, not just to have a place to assess schools, but open employers' eyes to say, here's a chance to mentor a young group of people who can come through here. What will they need for you to hire them one day? Not necessarily make the commitment to hire them, but oh, by the way, the expectation is these should be our employees. And also set the expectation around students saying, okay, you need to be taking that internship seriously because you want to be able to say to anybody, I can do this job better than anybody else. We don't have to back off those expectations at all. Well, when we discovered that it was not about technology that made us successful. We thought technology was the enabler that did all things. And then once we looked at it, we could do this anywhere. It was a change in attitude and opening up our eyes. Oh, by the way, there's some people who can do the job right now without any of these, quote, accommodations. I think when we opened the doors to everybody in the world to come see this place, a lot came, but only about 10% do anything. And I think that is natural. They say, well, if it's same performance, why should I do something differently? So that's the disappointing, because it's hard for them to see the wonderful things. Not only is it the same work, it changed our culture and made it better. Our team works better. Our managers who are there say, I don't want to work anywhere else. I have more support. I have more meaning in this work and doing great work with my team. It's hard for an outsider to see that initially. So, yes, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I have no doubt that the future of these kids coming out of school is going to be a lot different than the future of the kids that came apart over the last 10 years. I think it's going to get better because these aren't those kids, these are us. And it needs to be our problem, not somebody else's problem. My son Austin, his path, he's now 26. He'd worked a little bit in a Walgreens store, maybe 12 hours a week, making minimum wage. He became my chauffeur in Chicago, the airport, get up at 4 o'clock in the morning if I need be, for $20. Always consistent, ready to do it. But it's interesting, sometimes good things happen. One of the companies that came and saw us, Meyer, a big company in the Midwest, launched their own disability initiative. And they built a distribution center about an hour from our home up in Wisconsin. And their vice president called me and said, we'd like Austin to be one of our first team members. So he drives an hour 10 minutes each way, makes a living wage, works the second shift, shifts that nobody else wants to work in a cold area of the distribution center, and loves it. He's got friends, he's got relationships, he's got a future. And I would have never, ever dreamed that that would have happened.